InvestorIdeas.com podcasts.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of InvestorIdeas.com podcast. Today's podcast is sponsored by Cannabis Swiss Corporation, trading on the OTC as CSUI, a fully licensed cannabis cultivation and distribution company in Switzerland for recreational tobacco products and medical CBD oils. Now, in today's podcast, we're going to be looking at a few public and private company announcements focusing specifically on the emerging psychedelic sector, hence why today's podcast is named Psychedelic Spotlight. We're looking at announcements from New Wave Holdings Corporation, trading on the CSE as SPOR and the OTC as TRMNF, MMED Industries Incorporated, as well as Mind Medicine Incorporated, trading on the NEO as MMED and the OTCQB as MMEDF. And at the end, I will also be recommending some new reading material if you're interested. So, first starting today with New Wave Holdings Corporation, an investment issuer that provides capital and support services, who announced that will bring Microdose to Vancouver November 1st to 10th to start production for the next phase of the World on Drugs documentary. Now, the team at New Wave is pleased to announce that Microdose is traveling to Vancouver from November 1st to 10th to film the next phase of the upcoming documentary, and the production aims to illuminate a bold documentary on drug policy, psychedelic medicine, and mental health comes at the pivotal moment in our collective evolution. The sharp increase in opioid-related overdose deaths in BC highlight the urgent need for new treatments and policy, providing the unique opportunity to spotlight psychedelic medicine. We have scheduled interviews with leading experts in their respective fields and would love to hear your suggestions for interview candidates, key locations, and critical subject matter that should be filmed in Vancouver. And you can find a link attached in the article to fill out the form, as well as a link to Microdose and the World on Drugs footage and documentary. We would like to thank New Wave Holdings for being an inaugural sponsor for this next phase of our international effort to document the intersection of mental health, psychedelic medicine, and global drug policy around the world. We're committed to building a compelling, objective narrative by listening to experts. This documentary will truly be a team effort, Microdose CEO Patrick Moore said. Now, the Microdose team hopes to continue the journey by heading to Portugal, where full drug decriminalization provides fascinating insight into a potential more progressive way forward. We also intend on going to Jamaica, another iconic location significantly impacted by the war on drugs that is pioneering new mental health treatments. And as our worldwide documentary filmmaking journey progresses, we hope to illuminate the potential of psychedelic medicine to disrupt the mental health crisis across the globe, said Patrick Moore. Now, the data form, if you or anyone you know wants to contribute or is interested to collaborate on this project, you can fill out this form. And they do have a limited filming period that's available, so unfortunately they won't be able to connect directly with all submissions. But everybody that fills out this form on behalf of somebody or behalf of themselves will get a free copy of the completed film as a thank you for the gift of contribution. And if you are interested in getting involved with this dynamic documentary filmmaking project in terms of collaboration, sponsorship, or general input, please reach out to Connor Haslam at connor@microdose.buzz. Now, the main reason I'm going to be focusing on psychedelics today is, as I kind of discussed earlier in the week with cannabis, I do wonder when the medical community or when people at large who are skeptical of psychedelics or cannabis will have enough data. This is something that I discussed in length earlier in this week on the continuing issues even within the cannabis industry surrounding there's not enough data for us to properly diagnose this. There's not enough data for people to feel comfortable buying these products. There's not enough data to assume that these products are safe, much safer than thousands of products that are currently available and you can buy over the counter in drugstores, you can buy easily in a liquor store, you can buy at a gas station. There are thousands of products out there that are extremely harmful to human health, human mental health, and the overall population of our society. And yet, none of those products are regulated in the same way as cannabis or psilocybin, drugs that have been proven time and time again to have massive impact on people's mental and physical health. And I do wonder if there is a possibility, or if these naysayers, or if the medical community will eventually or ever endorse these types of products. And I wonder if they can do it in a time that's not making it too late. We are facing a pandemic. Many people have lost their jobs. Many people are on the verge of bankruptcy. Many people have committed suicide and had opioid overdoses in the last year. Most of the deaths related to COVID in reality have been people who died not because of having COVID, but because of the impacts of COVID to their life. Suicide rates are exponentially higher than COVID-related deaths. Opiate overdoses are exponentially higher than COVID-related deaths. And I'm not trying to deny that COVID exists or is a part of life right now. But the reality is people need access to the proper medicine right now. Not 2 years from now, not 5 years from now, but right now, if we're going to have humans survive in a comparable way into the future. And this documentary, as much as it is very interesting, and I'm very much in support of it, and I hope everyone would fill out these forms or try to be involved, especially if you are in the medical community. Stop pussyfooting around and get into this industry and endorse the future of medicine. If you actually care about people's health, whether you are in medical school, whether you are a current practitioner, whether you are a pharmacist, or if you know someone who is one of these occupations, they need to endorse this type of medicine immediately. Not 2 years from now, not when there's more data piles that you can read through ad nauseum. The data is in. We have had almost 70 years of anecdotal and actual data that is available, but people seem to disregard this. And I don't know why, especially when you compare real data for pharmaceuticals, which is complete bullshit by comparison. We use many pharmaceutical medicines today that when you actually look at what is their efficacy rating, what is the overall data supporting them as a medicine, it's extremely limited and as well extremely biased. Most of the data coming from the pharmaceutical world is directed right from the pharmaceutical world with very few double-blind tests or, again, biased tests. So I don't know what it's going to take for the average person, the medical community, or the world in general to endorse these drugs for the necessity that they are. Not an option, not something we can get to later, not something that can be endorsed in the future when there's another 6 years of data that's been provided, but right fucking now. And I do think that, I don't know, hopefully some people will hear this and tell someone they know that they should be endorsing these products. And they should be at least considering or better educating themselves on this so that way they don't have these outdated, ridiculous biases. I've had multiple interviews. We talked with Tommy Chong about how he spent his entire life knowing that this medicine was correct, doing something that was illegal with the knowledge in mind that this was not meant to be illegal. And we look at today where many people are locked in their houses and can't go outside or can't see their family and have all of these mental health strains. And you wonder what's going to happen in states like California or in provinces like BC, where now into Halloween and into Thanksgiving and into Christmas, no one's allowed to visit their families. No one's allowed to go outside. No one's allowed to enjoy the season that's upon us. And if that keeps on moving forward and you start to criminalize people for going outside, everyone becomes a criminal. And at that point, then no one is a legal citizen. And I do wonder what the impact of that is going to be. Sorry to rant, but I'll continue on with MMED Industries, who announced it entered into a research contract and facilities use agreement with the University of Calgary. Because there is some people who are actually on board with this industry. The agreements provide MMED with further scientific and laboratory support to accelerate development of its psychedelic derivative parent library, the Cyberry TM. The University of Calgary is excited to partner with MMED, an innovative company pursuing psychedelics research, says Associate Vice President, Research Innovation, Dr. Steve Larder. Partnerships like this combine frontline discovery with providing real solutions to society and creating opportunities for our researchers and students to help bring cutting-edge knowledge to the market. Now, the additional resources at the University of Calgary is providing to MMED complement and enhance our strengths, said Dr. Joseph Tucker, the CEO of MMED. This collaboration places MMED in a position to expand the breadth and depth of the psychedelic derivatives contained in the MMED Cyberry TM. Now, through the agreements, MMED will be able to leverage new state-of-the-art equipment and laboratory space at the University of Calgary, as well as to draw upon its world-class expertise. And laboratory and resource costs at MMED Cyberry TM expansion will be effectively and efficiently allocated with development progress, and it will be expedited. So this is another good example of, in Canada, if you're in BC, you should be freaking out over the world you live in, where we have an opioid crisis that is unparalleled compared to other provinces. And we just had a recent election, and our government has done very little to allow cannabis to be made available and accessible to both medical and recreational consumers, and is probably the slowest province when it comes to drug reform and regulation policies. Again, we're talking about Calgary and Alberta here. And people did not anticipate that Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta would become the cannabis centers for the first year of cannabis legalization in Canada. But they were, because they cut the bullshit and just went for what was an obvious choice. BC has been dicking around for the last 2 years and continues to do so, still not allowing delivery, which is preposterous in a COVID era. still not allowing for companies to sell directly to retailers, for producers to be able to sell. Yes, the Farm Bill is going to be hopefully passed, and that will be in the future. But again, the future is not close enough, and many people need access to this immediately. And even now, with psychedelic research, yes, there's great stuff coming out of the University of British Columbia and other research providers in BC, but our BC government is not endorsing this in the way that it should be. And we have Calgary and Alberta, who could potentially, again, jump ahead of us in massive leaps and bounds in an industry that is not only part of the culture of BC or California if you're in the US, but is also necessary right now with the amount of crises that are going on. So, again, if you are in BC, I highly recommend that you start paying attention to the regulations surrounding psilocybin, surrounding LSD, surrounding MDMA, and the research and clinics that are provided. Pay attention to MAPS, pay attention to some of the other platforms that are in Canada proposing new ideas surrounding this. Pay attention to our universities to hope that future students who are going into medicine have access to this as real knowledge and aren't pointed away from psychedelic medicine as a necessary tool within their medical toolbox. Again, it's just idiotic at this point to not use every possible resource available, and these resources are not only very non-toxic in a general sense, but extremely effective over the long term. Now, speaking of where the money's going, Mind Medicine Incorporated announced that it has closed its previously announced bought deal short from prospective offerings, including the exercise in full and underwriters over allotment option. And in connection with the offering, the company issued 27 million units of the company at a price per unit of $1.05 for gross proceeds of $28 million. Now, Canaccord Genuity Corp acted as the sole bookrunner and underwriter in this offering. Haven't heard from Canaccord Genuity Corp in a while. They didn't quite nail it within the cannabis space over the last couple of years, but they're at least smart enough to realize that the money is going to psychedelics, and they clearly are showing that with $28 million. Now, MindMed co-founder and co-CEO J.R. Rand said the strong institutional investor interest from this oversubscribed financing demonstrates that the vast appetite for companies pursuing clinical trials of psychedelic medicines with the FDA and other regulatory bodies. With our sights set on a NASDAQ uplisting, this fresh funding will further assist the MindMed team in our mission to build the most diverse development pipeline of psychedelic-inspired medicines and experimental therapies for patients. So, as I said here, this is where the money is going, and this is the biggest difference, and I've had this in interviews that they've said the same thing, where this is the big difference between cannabis and psychedelics, is that money is flowing into the psychedelic industry aggressively right now. And the reason is because pharmaceutical companies and the medical community at large realizes that not only is this a beneficial tool for the future, but also that this is going to undercut their market share so substantially that if they do not endorse this now, if they do not have products within the pipeline when these things are legalized, when clinics are open, when people have access to these products or demand access to these products, that they will not exist anymore. When we look at the average pharmaceuticals for antidepressant, for anti-anxiety, for all of these common ailments of just life, we see liver failure, we see organ failure, we see massive side effects and many suicides from these people, or death because of these toxins that they're putting into their body on a daily basis. And then the slippery slope of the pharmaceutical world is you take one drug and then you're going to have to take 15 more to deal with the aforementioned side effects. Psychedelics can be a one and done experience for many people, especially when dealing with near-death patients or terminal patients, especially when dealing with postpartum depression or PTSD or any form of depression. Seasonal depression is going to be upon us right now. So to not have access to this medicine is preposterous. And that'll be me ending today with some reading material that I would recommend, because I do think that as we move forward, everyone, whether you are in the investment world, whether you are in the medical world, whether you're just a human being, you need to be on board with this next phase of what's going to be taking over medicine, and you need to endorse it in every possible avenue you can. And I have no problem saying that for me, psychedelics are a necessary part of my mental health. At this point, I take my large dose, some sort of psychedelic trip once a week, and it makes me feel extremely refreshed and able to deal with this world of bullshit right now. So these are some books that I'd recommend that if you are still on the fence about psychedelics, please read these and please give them your actual attention and understanding that to disregard this is only going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt the world. It's not going to hurt businesses necessarily. It's going to hurt you and the people you care about, because eventually you're going to know someone who has depression or PTSD or some need for this medicine. And if you don't embrace this now, you will be kicking yourself and hating yourself for a very long time if someone you know dies or has some extreme bad effects from not having access to the proper medicine. So the two books is Psychedelic Medicine, The Healing Power of LSD, MDMA, Psilocybin, and Ayahuasca, which explores the potential of psychedelics as medicine and the intersections of politics, science, and psychedelics, as well as offers non-technical summaries of the most recent double-blind, placebo-controlled studies with MDMA, psilocybin, LSD, and ayahuasca. This book includes the work of Rick Doblin, Stanislav Grof, James Fradman, Julie Holland, Dennis McKenna, David Nichols, Charles Grobe, Phil Wolfson, Michael and Annie Mitofsky, Roland Griffiths, Catherine McLean, and Robert Whitaker, and is available on Amazon, or if you're in Canada, you can buy it online from my local head shop, Mary Jane's headquarters. This book, again, if you are in the medical community or if you are on the fence about what is the potential benefit of psychedelics or how safe are these, read this book. Read the actual studies. Again, how much data does need to be provided. When you compare this to FDA regulated products that are out on the market, they do not have 70 years worth of data before they are available on the shelf. Most of them are in development for maybe 10 years, and many of them, again, are having in-house biased studies before these products are put out there. There's tons of lobbying, there's tons of underhanded politics that go into this, and we all just seem to accept that as normal. Whereas there's products that can be naturally grown by anyone. I've talked about how there's a big uptick in selling psilocybin grow kits within Canada, and that within the next 2 years, this will be available in stores. That's not a guess, that's a guarantee. There are already some stores, some in Vancouver Island, some in other parts of Ontario, some in Quebec, some even in the east coast of Canada that already sell these products, and they're going to continue to do so because, again, this is something you could grow for pennies on the dollar in your house, have access to, and it could cure your mental illnesses overnight. The second has garnered more controversy, but it is, in my opinion, a must-read during this time of history in particular, and that is Thus Spoke the Plant, a remarkable journey of groundbreaking scientific discoveries and personal encounters with plants by Monica Gagliano. Now, this book is both haunting and profound and offers a new perspective on plants, medicine, and communication with nature in the modern world. This book is also available on Amazon, and if you'd like to hear her words directly, which I highly recommend, there's several videos of her on YouTube, and I've included links to their Amazon books as well as the YouTube links in the article. This is another person who has definitely gone against the curve of her own scientific field and has proposed some very groundbreaking ideas about how we should best adhere to the future of plant medicine and how we should best continue with medicine and knowledge in general. Again, when you look at many of these ayahuasca cultures in South and Latin America, when you look at Native American culture in Canada and in the US, they have understood the language and benefit of plant medicine and of communicating directly with nature through these psychedelic medicines for a long time. And Western medicine has done a pretty aggressive job of trying to delegitimize every piece of information that they've provided over the last thousands of years. And hopefully that is getting reversed right now. And I do believe that for everyone right now, you should be having your own psychedelic experience, or at least looking into it and doing it in a safe, normal setting, but having this experience now, because you need to de-brainwash years worth of garbage that's been put into the media, that's been put into schools, that's been put into the scientific community at large. And there is this story over and over again, and Monica Gagliano is a perfect example of someone who was so brainwashed by the academic world she had been enveloped in for years of her life, who through one experience realized how preposterously wrong she had been about so many things, and has now spent the last 10 years of her life, or actually about 15 so now, trying to undo all of the knowledge she found she had learned. And I do think that this is essential, especially if you are a student in school right now, or you're a person who's engrossed in this world. You need to understand that there's going to be a big change in the medical world within the next decade, and it is already underway. And the people who aren't endorsing this are going to be looked at as quacks. Never forget that the medical community that everyone loves to trust so much also prescribed people with alcohol during a certain period of time, with cigarettes during a certain period of time, and with thalidomide for a certain period of time. So the medical community has a long history of being fucking wrong. And this is a chance for them to now embrace the right type of medicine and embrace healing in a way that hasn't been seen before, at least not in our modern culture. And I do hope that that is the case for the future. Once again, today's podcast was sponsored by Cannabis Swiss Corporation, trading on the OTC as CSUI, a fully licensed cannabis cultivation and distribution company in Switzerland for recreational tobacco products and medical CBD oils. That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated CM certification. InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. Investor Ideas does not condone the use of cannabis except where permissible by law. Our site does not possess, distribute, or sell cannabis products.